Hello and welcome to Experiment Lab, the daily show with JK. I'm JK, your host, and I'm joined by my team. Okay, Walter is also here. Amar, welcome. Good morning.
Yeah,
Walter, good morning.
that's okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Walter.
Good morning.
It's a new day, new script. Probably we should talk about all that is going on. So, catching up on with what we have been talking about in a couple of days, and even yesterday, like the conversation was with regard to how the interview process happens, and it continues to happen over and over again. So we are trying to establish that there is a pattern in how they do this, and that exactly
Yeah, just a
translated.
minute. Hold on, JK. I am going to receive a call for net.
Okay, so you want to start the show with a call? Go ahead, do it.
Hello. Who is? Yes. Maybe we lost the
Yeah,
connection.
yeah, that's fine, right? So that is going to happen, continues to happen for us. So, Walter, help me out here, right? So, where do we stand in terms of what we are experimenting here, and what is the topic that we can address today?
Last night I was able to finish the second part of how the World Cup and what went on with uh, labor abuses there, and how that relates to H-1B visa. So I was able to finish that, and it's was interesting looking into things and how, despite some of what the Qatari government said, that when laborers were interviewed, they were saying that they had to pay recruitment fees and a lot of them were still in poverty. So it's a lot of it can relate to what's going on with the H-1B visa, because the fear is now that, like, all the football journalists are going to be worrying about other things like the Premier League and everything. Now that it's gone, the big labor organizations are calling out FIFA and Qatar, but most of the attention is going to be gone. So it's turning into a situation like the H-1B visa, uh, those holding a H-1B visa in the United States, because there's not going to be a lot of attention as far as widespread media coverage goes on trying to correct the issue. And looking at those parallels was interesting and a bit sad. It would be nice if the labor organizations did looking more into the H-1B visa issues within the United States and put some attention on that, because that could be a good start to at least starting a snowball chance of change for how the law is written.
Yes, to that point, Walter, right? So, how do we even get that attention? Because for them, it's not just like the visa issue. It's related to the economy, right? So unless large number of people who are on, in spite of what you are referring to, what happens in the Middle East and other countries, like we don't have control over there, and all those people who make complain about human right violation and abuses and hiring fees and all those things, the law only can take course. In terms of this H1B issue here, the same thing, right? Even the H1B candidates are not willing to come forward. And the problem is like it is kind of a lottery system. I believe that like most of them know that. I just came across with one of the profile getting the exact thing like that we needed it. I just wanted to show that before we have this conversation. So looking for H1B sponsorship for fiscal year 2024. So they have already started for the next year. So that is like usually they happen like in the month of April. So they just start 100 days before. asking for candidates who need this H1B sponsorship, and also even green card filing. So how both are being tied together, that's what I wanted to talk about it. So here, like they are giving like applicable for all visas, free registration and filing, eligibility, like students on F1 visa status. It's a clear cut indication that like that is how like they make that trap for people who come on student visa, who are on loan, who are on debt, who has to pay that. They will be tied to this H1B program. And even for people who are on H4, that's an interesting thing. And even L1, L2, right? And OPT, these are like people who are on student visa and who are doing second masters, and even they are targeting Canadian citizens. So I really don't know. Like they just say that like for 2023 March 1st marks the first day USCIS accepts H1B registration for the fiscal year 2024. That begins in October of 2023. So employers seeking to file a H1B cap petition are required to submit H1B electronic registration. Now they have upgraded to electronic rather than the paper one. And for each worker, a registration period that is open between March 1st to March 18. So they have given a contact. I'm trying to maybe reach out to them, like even they have given a WhatsApp number that clearly indicates that like they are calling from it doesn't matter like whether they are in India or other thing. We will find that out, right? We will email them and see like how they are doing this H1B sponsoring process. So that clearly will show to the US government that this is an entire system at fault. So the problem here remains with the government, right? I don't know how we can attack the government here. Help me out, Walter, right? Because they make money out of the system. So that is where like they find there's like, oh, there is nothing wrong in this. Even people complain, they say that like, oh, it's one or two here and there. That is always going to happen. And we are addressing it like through a different mechanism, right? So you can report it to Department of Labor and Justice Department will prosecute. So they just created a system saying that like it is foolproof and nobody can. And of course, they will take action on employers who are abusing it. But they literally know that like they are allowing this to happen by bringing in the non-immigrant and tying them to this immigration process called green card filing, and also giving the control to the employers to exploit to the maximum. And in this same process, they can also make money out of it, right? Like 60,000, 80, 60,000 and plus 20,000 for people who do the masters, right? And the student's visa or whatever category they come in. So almost 80,000 application every year for which they get money from the employers. So it's a money making mission for the government as well. So how do we then address this? The government is not going to change their mindset. That's where like my struggle is like, are we doing the right thing just by talking about it or exposing it? What will be the ultimate goal?
Well, I mean, I think looking at the United States government as a one singular, almost like hive mind entity isn't the proper way. It's not Saudi Arabia. It's not the royal family where everything goes through them and it's not really going to change. I mean, there's people within the government who are going to be more likely to be favorable to change and rewriting legislation. So I think that's kind of where it starts, and it will be coming with a lot of evidence, whether that takes another year, another 2 years to show how it's being abused and how they don't treat United States citizens the same way they treat green card holders or H-1B visa holders, and getting people to come forward who have been through the H-1B visa process and had global experience to be willing to talk about it. I mean, some will probably need to testify in front of Congress. That would be the most powerful thing, especially if the story is really bad, because there's one thing that gets the media's attention, and when you're talking to Congress, is a really bad sob story, because that'll get them headlines, because people in the United States love reading negative headlines. And I think that's kind of where it starts. And I mean, might also be meetings with members of Congress to talk about what needs to be done once the evidence is gathered, because I mean, that's the way a lot of organizations go about getting change when it doesn't seem possible. But I mean, I think that's going to be the process, is identifying people who are in Congress that are would be willing to listen to the change, showing them the evidence, going through process with them, getting them to at least talk about something in a committee, and then possibly writing legislation, and and having having individuals who've gone through the process speak about it in a public manner, or even if some can come forward and not be public, that would also help. So I mean, it's just really a process that will just take time, but I mean, the layout is there.
Yeah, I agree, right? So you just bring in that positivity, right? Because I try to see that like, okay, this is a hopeless case. We can't do anything about it. But then it's a long road. What
Yes,
you are
it's
saying that,
it's going to be long. I mean, yeah, more evidence is going to need to be gathered. More people are going to be talked to that have been victims of the system. But I've seen organizations through my time as a journalist that didn't really want to follow a process and thought they could do things, quote unquote, their way, the quick way to get national change, and it just doesn't happen, or affect elections, and it doesn't happen. And people within the organization are giving kind of the wrong information, or are allowed to think certain things that aren't accurate, that kind of stagnate progress in the change you're looking for. And then I've seen organizations who go through all this stuff, all these steps, and get meetings with members of Congress and do things and actually study what they're doing. And I think that's kind of what the path that Stop Now is on. It's actually trying to go out there, collect evidence, listening, and putting through forward a process. So I think it's just certain things that I've seen that were very negative in other organizations that thought they kind of could know everything and do everything, that's not present here. So I think that's why, I mean, it's going to be a long road to get there, but I think with gathering all the evidence and convincing victims to come forward, I think that's something that will definitely get some members of Congress attention, and that can be used to try to get legislation passed, which is going to be difficult because Congress is going to need to be in a favorable set for that to really happen. But that is the best course of action, because I doubt it's going to be a bipartisan thing.
yes. So I don't want like to stress on this too much, right? So what if questions like, what if this doesn't happen? Like what, uh, whether it's Democrat or Republic, right? So both are at fault in this, right? So even with the bipartisan and all these things is definitely not going to make a change in the life of people who are victimized, who are traumatized, who left it out. So many things can be said about it. So that is the reason, like what we are trying to do is like, all we can do is like, as you mentioned, right, collect the evidence, go through the process and put it forward, bring in awareness, and let them decide whether they want to make that change or not. So it's not going to happen in few months or few years. Even it might take like 10 years, a decade. A fight is worth, that's what like I believe, why we have to eradicate human trafficking and modern day slavery is what any modern civilization will aspire to do it. So that being said, like I would like to move forward with our mission of fighting for this cause, and in terms of trying to get the attention, what exactly can we do? So that is something like I just wanted to explore and also emphasize to our audience as well, like how their support will go a long way for us like to achieve our mission. So that is something like not, I don't know how to put it. Like I'm just lost with the words. Uh, though it's not in our control, we can do something like to get through and explore the possibility of reaching more audience, and also trying to connect to the platform where we get these visibility in terms of what we are doing and why we are doing, what is the intent in our uh, daily show. That is something like I just wanted to streamline, and I wanted to have some viewpoints. Like, since Amar, you are also listening and watching here and taking part in the experiment, so what do you have to say, if at all you have anything to add before Walter shares his viewpoint?
Thank you, Jack. I think if all of the organizations who are fighting against H1B, if they will arrange all of the evidence and also the victims and collect those data and submit to or file a complaint to the court or show in the government uh, site, and if that's way the government take a proper action. I think it's not only a government part, of also awareness as shared. Awareness is the main fact here. So all is essential for this part. So I think, yeah, if victims will come and share their problems that they are suffering, that's way this can be solved. And it will take time. It's not change in a day. I think it will take time, and the government should take proper action against the problems, I think.
Yeah, Walter, your thoughts on this?
I mean, the question was how to bring awareness to everything, correct? But through the Daily Show.
Yes, not just bringing in awareness, like how do we reach the larger audience?
No, I mean that's a whole social media, a social media kind of strategy that would take. I mean that would take optimization of hashtags and titles on YouTube and on Twitter or whatever follows Twitter, whether that's Mastodon or Hive, and even Facebook and Instagram, and just getting the attention out there, because if that's one thing that does work, is getting being active on various social media platforms and finding people who would be interested in what you are talking about. But at that point, it becomes more important to have everything in order. Like, people are going to ask questions about, can you prove this is like modern day slavery? Because people are going to think like sex trafficking and stuff like that, and then that's kind of where the onus of actually showing that's going to come up really heavy. So I mean, it's I mean, getting all that stuff optimized and prepared for a big blitz is possible. Like I've got a background in doing that, and I mean, quicker ways to that people have done it is by spending advertising money. But I don't think we're going to have to do that, since it's not something that needs to be done in 2 months. But that is something that can be done, is getting attention on YouTube, on other social media platforms, and getting the word out there, and finding more like-minded people, which I think can be done without being hyperbolic, which seems to be the strategy for anyone who's talking about anything political. And this is a political topic. I don't think we have to do that and be loud influencers, but I think it would be helpful to use those strategies to get attention. I mean, even something like Twitch would get attention. Being on Twitch could bring people in that didn't know about it, because there is a political uh, following on Twitch as well. So I mean, there's a lot of different avenues to get more attention that I think could be employed and used effectively.
Yes, that's absolutely right. So again, right, so there are different platforms and the impact on social media uh, to connect to different sources and get that attention is the best possible route for any. But then again, we are not trying to get viral or get attention for just one story and then move on to the next one. So it's an ongoing thing. So as an organization, we just have to uh, get that attention. It's not just one thing that we are focused on here, but even in terms of addressing this H1B issue itself, right? So against the corporates and how they do these malpractice, and also they are trying to get away with it like through legal loopholes. It's definitely a tougher fight, and also, as you mentioned, right, involving those political activist groups and trying to get the message across so that everybody is like kind of uh, understanding that like what is expected out of here. So it's not that confusing, but still, to anyone to hear the story and to relate to what exactly is happening within them. Like, for example, a simple quote I would say, uh, anyone who is offered a job and a sponsorship will not have this question of, oh, I'm going to become a victim and I am get into this trap. So that will not occur to anyone, right? Even for me, like still, I'm still, though I haven't gone through that process and I have not how do I say that? Like, I don't have you and me, like, we don't have that lived experience. Like, let's say, like, Amar is here, and we are saying that, like, you are getting $100,000 job in US, and you are getting the sponsorship. We are sponsoring you the H1B. He will right away jump from a seat and say, like, "Yeah, I got the jackpot, right? I am going to explore." No matter what, we are going to convince him, saying that, like, it's a trap. Your life will be thrown away, right? You are moving thousands of miles from across the globe and coming to here. Like, there is no guarantee that you will have this better life, and you might end up going back and losing more money in this process. N- if anyone says that, like, I don't know what Amar will answer to that, right? That is my struggle here, right? So that's where, like, the story is kind of getting distorted in a way that, like, oh, this is not happening for everyone in large scale. It is only for people who are not smart enough, and they, as you mentioned, right? So how immediately people think that, like, human trafficking is like something like you are snatched and grabbed and kind of kidnapped or smuggled into. That's what is human trafficking, or even mainly with sex trade and people who are forced to do that as a life as a prostitute. That is also, in a way, hard for legal experts and law enforcement to prosecute itself, right? So unless the willing parties, like affected persons, realize that, like, they are a victim and they are going through that trauma and they want to get out of that life, nobody can save them. That's the story here, right? So Amar, what do you think? Like, what do you have to say? Like, let's say, like, as such, even though we are a non-profit, right? Stop Now is willing to sponsor you an H1B and offer you $50,000, right? Let's not make it like very glamorous. And uh, even $50,000 is a big amount for you. Won't you agree to me?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, of course, I will try to grab the opportunity. But before that, as I know, as I am working with stuff now, and I know all of the situation, what will be happen after I will go there. So I will justify all of them. then I will take my decision, because just for a big amount, I will go there and I will be suffering. That will not good for my from my experience. I can say it. And your government has given a good opportunity to hire people, hire talent for billion-dollar companies. But from our experience, we are looking at the most of the people taking it as a business. So that should not be a good practice, I think. So yeah, that's my point. What do you think?
Again, it's an individual choice, right? So again, nobody is kind of going to force. It's only shared experiences, and people will tell the story, like people who have become victim. And definitely, I'm trying to bring in some of the victims to our show and also interview them and ask them questions and try to understand this more deeper. And that way, like we can question this with the attorneys and like Walter, help me out. We planned for different law firm attorneys like to come to our show and interview them on what exactly this uh, means for our audience, and also how the legal system can help us out, right? Again, it's much easier like for everyone to say that like it's individualized and it's on case by case, and we see a pattern, and it's a large scale operation that is being done by $1 million companies and $1 billion companies. So that's where like it's hard to crack and get to the root of it and resolve this problem. But still, we are trying it. I think it is worth. And that's all I can say. And I thought of uh, ending it in a good note. So, any other additional comment or thoughts from you, Walter, Amar?
Yeah, I want to say that don't you think that a strong law can stop it? Because if I will go there with the H1B sponsorship, suppose Cognizant giving me the opportunity to go there by H1B, and after going there with 3 months or 2 months, they will hire me. So I will, if there is a strong law, then I can make a or file a complaint, and the government will take a strong action for them, and that can be a solution, I think. What do you think, Walter? Got it?
Changing the wording of the law, it might even be changing it into a new visa designation would change the entire process. So it'd be brand new, and I think that's the one thing that probably should happen. Just it shouldn't be presented to people who don't want any immigrants here, period. Because they would just use it to be like, let's just cancel all these visas and just not let them in at all. But yeah, I think that's really the process is getting new a new text for the law so people can so it can work differently, and there and it closes a lot of the loopholes that are currently there that kind of almost incentivizes abuse and takes money away from those who are supposed to be getting paid, and makes it difficult for those who have complaints to get anything done because they have to go through a large bureaucratic web while being a non-citizen, which is a difficult thing. So I think that's kind of the approach and how everything can be changed eventually. And I mean, yeah, I do think there are definitely there's definitely a path for that.
Yeah, so the interesting thing, like from your thoughts, like I picked up, we can talk about it in the coming days. So it is kind of what comes to my mind, Walter. So it is like for or against immigration policies, as you said, right? So it's like, okay, let's completely ban. So these kind of criminal activities is going on for long. So let's not bring in all those immigrants anymore. That's not going to happen because the economy and all that capitalism is built on based on bringing in people. And
There are definitely people in Congress who would try to use that to ban immigrants because of bigotry, in their system and how they got elected in the first place. There are definitely people in Congress that would try that. I could actually find their
Yeah.
names and probably call them out.
Absolutely, you are right. So again, people try to spin it and use it to their advantage and blame it on each other. So that's exactly what we are all as humans capable of. Let's talk this through, and it's nice to have a longer conversation on this on our continuing fight. With that, I'll sign off for today. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Amar. Bye for now.
Bye.